St. Paul makes a really interesting and important point in this beginning of his letter to the church at Corinth. He's reminding them of how God works. And he says, God chose the foolish. God chose the weak. God chose the lowly and despised, those who count for nothing. That is a really good reminder to us that is how God thinks and how God acts. Because you would appreciate it, it may sound odd to you because it is not what our society does. Our society wants the best. They want the best and the brightest and the richest and the most popular. Those are the people our society chooses. It's who, sadly, sometimes we choose when we're looking around, looking for someone to follow or something like that. But God's economy is much different. And Paul brings it up here. Jesus makes the same point in the Beatitudes. And it's a great lesson to know. And so if you allow me, I would like to tell you an example of that out of the Old Testament, the story of Gideon. It is just a wonderful example of how God works. So let me get the story started, and then we'll invite the kids up for the really good part. So you have to understand that when this happens, the people of Israel, they have finally gotten out of the wilderness, and they have taken over the promised land. And they did not have a king at this point. They only had what were called judges, men and women that God would raise up. And they did mostly two things. One, they judged. If you had a property dispute with somebody, you would go to the judge and they'd figure it out. But the other thing that judges did often was raise up armies and fight against people, countries that were oppressing the Israel nation. And so that is what was happening in the time of Gideon. The Midianites were I guess the best way to describe it, they were marauders, if you will. They would come in and they would raid the villages, especially during harvest time, and take away all the food. And so this was, of course, as you can imagine, a great burden to Israel. And they cried out to the Lord, and the Lord answered and sent an angel to Gideon. Now you have to understand, Gideon is not your stereotypical leader, a guy who's going to raise up an army. As a matter of fact, in quite a comical way, when the angel meets Gideon, he says to Gideon, "Hail, mighty warrior." And Gideon looks at the angel and pretty much says, "Oh boy, have you come to the wrong place." And goes on to describe that Gideon thinks that he is the least important, least worthy person in his family. He thinks his family is the least worthy and important family in his tribe. He thinks his tribe is the least and worthy of all of Israel. So as far as Gideon's concerned, if you're going to rank all the people of the nation of Israel top to bottom, he's on the very bottom. And that's who God comes to. And God wants him to do a couple things. And you got to understand, if you read the whole story, God is very polite, very nice to Gideon, keeps reassuring him, gives him some extra sort of things to help him understand, yeah, Gideon, it's fine. I'm with you. This is all going to work out. All right? And so at this point, before we get to the battle, can I invite the kids up? This is a terrific story. Come on up. So it turns out one summer, the Midianites, this people that weren't being very nice to the Israelites, they assemble their army for battle out in a field. And God says to Gideon, "All right, this is it. I need you to raise up an army. You're going to fight the Midianites." And God tells him up front, "You're going to win." And so Gideon does. It's amazing, given this guy. He gets 32,000 men to show up to fight this battle. And God looks and says to Gideon, "Hey, this isn't going to work. You got to get rid of some of these people. Because right now, if you go into battle with 32,000 people and you win, you're going to think you did it. I need you to understand that I'm going to win this battle for you." And so it's kind of funny the way God does it. But in different ways, God whittles down Gideon's army from 32,000 to 300. Now, you'd appreciate 300 people is not much of an army. And you also need to know, the adults need to appreciate this, Gideon didn't end up with 300 Rangers or Navy SEALs. He ended up with 300 misfits, might be the best way to describe it. And this is what he did with his 300 men. The Midianites were camped, and he sent his 300 men to form a circle around the camp one night. And he gave them an empty jar, like a clay jar. And he gave them a trumpet, and he gave them a torch. And he said, okay, this is what we're going to do. On my signal, I need you to break the pot you got, the clay pot, and I need you to blow the trumpet, make a big racket. And then I need you to raise up the trumpet and your torch and yell out for the Lord and for Gideon. And that's what they did. In the middle of the night, when the Midianites weren't expecting it, Gideon gave the signal, and they broke their pots and they blow their trumpets, and it was this big, big noise. And then they yelled out, for the Lord and for Gideon. And the Midianite army panicked. They all woke up. What's going on? What's going on? And they started fighting each other. So rather than coming out to fight the Israelites, they were so confused, they started fighting and killing each other. And having done that, then they were so panicked that then they ran away. And so Gideon did it. Gideon defeated the army of the Midianites, this big army with just 300 people and without even any weapons. Are you impressed? Okay, I am impressed. Hope you're impressed too. Hey, thanks for coming up, all right? But for the adults, it is a wonderful story, but it is what God does. God chooses these people, these unlikely people, and it is God that empowers them to do great things. If you want a modern day example, I would encourage you just to think of Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Most of you would know a little of her story. It's very easy to get caught up and say, oh, look at Mother Teresa and all that she did, this wonderful, amazing woman. But if you know something of her story, she's just a regular woman, just given her life, to be a sister, and was just teaching in kind of an upper middle class kind of prep school in India. But the Lord called her to do all this work that she did for the poor and the dying. It's really quite amazing, if you will. And so you need to remind yourself of this, because most of us, as Paul points out to the Corinthians, he starts off this thing, consider your own calling. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. Does that not describe many of us? We're not powerful. We're not wealthy. We don't have a lot of what society thinks we would need to be successful, to do great things. That's not necessary. We have the Lord. And so I'm just encouraging you, if the Lord asks you to do something, whether it is to get involved in a ministry, maybe it is to use some of your resources to give a little bit of money to something. Whatever it is, please don't get caught up in, well, I'm not up for this. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough influence. Just ignore that voice in your head. That is the voice of our society. It is not a good voice to listen to. Listen to the voice of the Lord, because who knows? I suspect not. You and I probably won't encounter an angel that calls us a mighty warrior, but I think the Lord thinks of us that way. He knows that you and I, with his power and his strength, can do amazing things.